Matt Campbell has been introduced as the new head coach of Penn State. Official opening press conference today at Penn State. Zach, I said a hire. I loved this hire from the beginning.
Yeah.
Best hire from the beginning. After hearing Matt Campbell talk, after hearing him, speak, and a lot of it's kind of coach speak stuff. I get that, right? Intensity, toughness, stuff like that. But just some of the stuff that he talks about, he values, and it's not just he talks about he values, but he's backed it up in his coaching career with what he values as well. It aligns with Penn State. The people that continue to say, "Oh man, Matt Campbell, all he cares about is stupid things and not enough with Penn State." It's not true. Okay, don't listen to the national media on this. This was an excellent hire. This was the best hire of the cycle, in my opinion. And I think Matt Campbell did more, said more to solidify that in this one. Zach, we're going to talk about some of the most important things that Matt Campbell said. I want to talk about the things we loved and the things that we learned. All right. So, what was one of the things that Matt Campbell talked about that you loved?
Well, this is less about the content and more just about his demeanor. He is the anti-Lane Kiffin.
Mm-hmm. And we
Like,
love anti-Lane Kiffin around here.
my gosh. Well, and it's we were talking about this tonight at the dinner table. Someone was asking me, why should I follow college football when it's all about money and when it's all about NIL and transfers and whatnot? And this is a Penn State fan asking me this. And I said, because college football is still won based on the character of your coach and the love for their players. Strip everything else away. Brian Kelly is a perfect example of this. He left Notre Dame, which was admittedly not as high profile of a program athletically than LSU. LSU just won a national championship in 2019. Brian Kelly said, I can't win a national championship here. I'm going to LSU. He went chasing. He tried to fake a stupid Louisiana accent to endear himself, but he was faker than anybody. And people saw right through him. And you know what? He got fired because he didn't love his players. He didn't care about the program. He cared about him. Matt Campbell, that dude loved Iowa State. And he got me to want to run through a freaking brick wall with his emotion, with his commitment, his decision within 24 hours or whatnot I'm hiring Terry Smith. That's my first move. Dude, I don't care about anything else. Like maybe this works, right? We'll see in 3 years, like if he wins a ton of games. But right now, I could not be more impressed with this guy.
Yeah, and just how much he emphasized family and everything. I don't think that, the story of Penn State football and, people having to come together with kind of some of the adversity that Penn State football has faced. And I think that Penn State gets too much grief, the program themselves and stuff like that. The program is trying to recover from some hard times in their past, and they've had to come together a whole lot to make that happen. Who do you rely on in adversity and tough times? It's your family. And Matt Campbell talked about how, to be able to have his mother and his father like 2.5 hours away and his family close, home for them was Iowa State for a while, but they are moving closer to home now to Penn State. It means a whole lot to him, and he wanted to make sure he did it at a point in time that it was right for his family as well. And I just think that is one more thing that just makes him the perfect fit for Penn State. This would have not felt right if it was Kalani Sitake. And this is not a shot at Kalani Sitake, but this would not have felt right with him coming over from BYU. I mean, that's his home. Like that makes sense for him. It's where he played, it's where his religion is, everything else. Like that makes sense for him. It would not make sense over here at Penn State. Matt Campbell, he's from Ohio, but he still, is around the Midwest, knows Pennsylvania very well. And he had, Cale Sanderson, the wrestling coach that came over from Iowa State as well that he's talking about. I mean, he has connections, and it just reminds you how important this hire was and how, Pat Kraft did a great job of pivoting. I wouldn't have liked, I would have liked it to not be a pivot. I would have liked for this to be the guy from the very beginning, but
Yeah.
obviously there's stories out there now about the agent and stuff like that. So give Pat Kraft a little bit of leeway there, I suppose. But overall, I think it's great. I think he fits the culture and everything else of Penn State. And then on the Terry Smith stuff, for him to say basically first and foremost, I want Terry Smith here. He's going to be critically important, is what he said. To them, his character, his leadership, and his deep knowledge of Penn State. It sounds like Matt Campbell's ready to come in and ready to learn from Terry Smith. He's not ready to come in and say, Terry Smith, I'm going to tell you how it is. He's ready to come in
Mhm.
and learn from Terry Smith.
Yeah. The other thing that impresses me, I mean, you can tell that he loves that he has this opportunity, and yet he hates who he had to leave behind.
Hmm.
Like, he's not being Lane Kiffin and being like, "Well, Ole Miss, like,
Yeah,
whatever."
he's not saying get on the plane or you're not coming with.
Yeah, like, he's like, I mean, weeping, man. Like, genuine tears of, and it wasn't just what he accomplished there. He wasn't a walking resume. He was talking about the people, the players that he got to lead, the players that, in his words, had the that trusted him and believed in him as a coach. And again, you don't know if this is going to work out long term, right? Like you really don't. But man, if I'm a Penn State recruit, or like someone who's thinking about transferring, and you're listening to him speak, like, doesn't that, like, him talking about that, doesn't that make you want to stick around?
You would think so.
And I know they have a lot of work to do in the 2026, like, first signing day came and went and they're in the dumpster, right? But I just wonder if the transfer portal is going to be a really good cycle with a guy like Campbell. And I think the 2027 class, while it may not be a super powered class, he wants to stay local. He wants to, 6 to 8 hour radius was his
Oh,
focus with
we'll get to that in
recruiting.
just a second. We'll get to
Yeah.
that in just a second.
But like, yeah, I'll just say, I think his demeanor, his posture, and his obvious care is such a win.
Hmm. Totally, totally. I had two more things that I loved. Did you have anything else that you loved?
A lot, but you go ahead.
Okay, maybe mine will coincide with yours. I loved that he talked about his past at a championship program at
Yep.
Mount Union. I think that it is so important in today's day and age that if you have championship expectations, you hire somebody who has been there before. And I think that is one of the mistakes that teams make when they hire coaches is they hire coaches to say, "Hey, you haven't been there before. We'll be the program to get you there." For being honest, it's the coach that gets the program there. Yes, maybe the program has won a championship in the past, but like you said, Brian Kelly to LSU because LSU has won a national championship doesn't always get you there, right? There are very
Mhm.
few programs that have that just championship DNA to be able to drag a coach there. LSU did it with Ed Orgeron, so I'm not trying to say it can't happen there, but more often than not, you want to hire somebody who has championship DNA. He had it as a player. He had it as a coach with Coach Karras, sorry, there at Mount Union, and I think that's really really important. I I've been clamoring somebody needs to hire the Indiana coordinators. They have that DNA in them. I know they haven't won a
Mhm.
championship. Well, they've won a Big Ten championship yet, but they have that in them, and I think it's so very important to hire that. And so I appreciated Matt Campbell talking about his championship DNA.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was good.
yeah. Um, and then the other thing, yeah, the last thing I loved, and then you can mention one or two other things if you have any. Pat Kraft spoke on the leaked audio. Credit to the Penn State reporter that asked about that. I did not think we were going to get that question in this press conference, but we did. And credit to Pat Kraft. I love that he didn't just say, I'm not going to talk about that, leave it alone. Like he got up there and he had a heartfelt response and he said, he apologized. He said he was embarrassed. And as much as I don't think he should be embarrassed, there were definitely things he said in there that, he did not want to be public, Michigan, Oregon, some of that stuff in there. But I loved that he is somebody who is willing to speak to his players with what he thinks. The player betrayed him, and whoever that player is needs to not play for Penn State ever again. I don't
Yeah.
know who it was, but that player should never show his face at Penn State ever again unless there is a deep apology that shows honest remorse for what he did, because that was terrible for him to record that and to put it out there. But for him to be willing to go to his players. I understand it probably wasn't the best way, but he was raw, he was real, and he was speaking what he actually felt to his players, which I don't think you get enough in college football
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly don't love how
Yeah,
he
I'm
went
not
about it.
endorsing the F bombs and
Yeah.
everything else, okay? But I do
Yeah.
I do appreciate the passion, and I do appreciate his willingness to, speak with actual care and emotion to his players.
Yeah. And he owned it. Like
Yeah.
he owned it. And yeah, that's all you can ask for.
Hmm.
So yeah, this has not been a great 2 months for Pat Kraft, but I think the way that he responded was very good. And again, we can talk about all again, the process. This feels like a recurring theme right now, like CFP, Penn State hiring process. The process was terrible, but the result was good. And in this case, it really like this could redeem it all.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Anything else you loved from the press conference before we get to what we learned?
I mean, a lot of what I learned is what I loved. So maybe we can transition.
Okay, let's transition to what we learned then. What was the biggest thing you learned from this press conference?
I mean,
Whether it's
I
about
think,
Matt Campbell, about the program, about Pat Kraft, whatever you want. Take it whatever direction you want.
yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things. One, they're kind of all lumped together, but you mentioned it before about his desire to be around family. And, he mentioned that this could be a place where he retires. To me, that's encouraging because he's not looking at Penn State as just another stepping stone. He is looking at this program as his destination, and not just a destination to win, but a destination to build a community, to build relationships. And, I appreciated this is something Ryan Day said on the Big Ten championship pregame, where it's like you've got to win games so that you can stick around to impact people. And I thought that was really insightful because if your why is just to win football games, again, at some point people see through you and they will not want to be around you. And it is very clear Matt Campbell wants to be around not just to win football games, but to have an impact in state college. And like, if we're honest, I think that's why James Franklin stayed so long at Penn State, because I think he's genuinely a good guy. And I think he really wants to impact players. He just got stale. But I think similarly, Matt Campbell wants to elevate this program. And more importantly, he wants to finish the next chapter of his life here. And I think with that, his focus is local, his recruiting. He's like, I know where I need to go, right? It needs to be 6 to 8 hour radius, which I don't think he said it specifically, but what's in that 6 to 8 hour radius? Ohio, New Jersey, DMV.
Virginia, New
Yeah.
York.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's some good players in New York nowadays. I mean, I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
like, Florida or anything like that, but there are some good players out there in New York.
Yeah. But if he locks down the DMV, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and can cherry pick some kids from Ohio.
That's where it's going to be really important to do the evaluations that he talked about, right? Did you
Yeah.
catch that with the general manager stuff?
I didn't. What did he
Yeah.
say there?
You go ahead and finish what you were talking about, and then I can talk about the general manager.
Well, no, because that was where I think.
Oh, leading into it. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things I learned was that basically Derek Hoodjer, I think is how you say it, not Hoosier, Hoodjer, I think is how you pronounce it. He is going to be the associate athletic director of football operations, which is essentially your general manager there at Penn
Mm,
State. They did not like make an official announcement, but he did everything he could possibly do to indicate that he would be the general manager there. And I loved his story about Iowa State, and I learned about that. I did not know the story of them basically having to create their own NIL place, and everything, and him basically writing every single contract for players. Like this guy going out here and doing this stuff, being a GM, working, being gritty, working from the ground up. I think that means a lot. And I think it means a lot that he's
mhm.
bringing him with him to Penn
Yep.
State. Now, this is a different level, right? You need to go out and find really, really good talent, but you also need to do solid evaluations. At Iowa State, they were probably doing solid evaluations, but they weren't going after five-star talent. You don't need to land every five-star at Penn State, but you do need to go after the Kevin Browns, the Joey O'Briens of the world. You do need to go after those
Mhm.
guys that are five stars, if not fringe five stars, and try to lock them up. And so I think, this whole idea of somebody coming in, this Derek guy coming in, being gritty, doing this stuff before, him working through this stuff. I learned that. I loved it, and I think it's going to be great for them to really focus on evaluations as well, because there are really good players in Ohio. There are really good players in Pennsylvania. There are really good players in Virginia that are three stars. And you best believe that Kirk Cinetti is doing a really good job of finding those guys. And that's where the edge is in college football right now. The edge is not go out and pay the five-star the most money. We see how that's worked out for Miami. We see how that works out for, some other programs out there. The edge right now, get the top tier players you need, pay them very well, but then also go out and get the three stars that should be 4 or 5 stars because they're not
Mhm.
being evaluated properly or they're not going to the camps. Go out and
Yeah.
find those guys, and I think that at Iowa State, he's done a very good job of practicing that, and I think he can continue to do it at Penn State.
Yeah. Well, and the guys that are underrated and fit your culture, which is like what
Yes.
we're seeing at Indiana. I think even the high profile programs that are getting these players, a lot of player retention is based on cultural fit.
hmm And you see
Um,
Georgia right now trying to work that way too. Georgia is
yeah,
pivoting currently from what they always did with just try to get the best players. And now they're getting players that don't fit their culture, who are very highly rated players, and they're passing on them because Kirby Smart is noticing that he has to be more of a culture guy than he has been in the past. His culture in the
yeah,
past has not been bad. His culture in the past has just been like, rah, crazy, energy and everything. But that's not always the best, as evidence of seeing how his players have demonstrated themselves on the roadways. I think I'll leave it at that.
whoops.
But I do think that he is kind of continuing to rework that as he sees the success of Indiana, the success of Ohio State with them doing their recruiting, and I think that Matt Campbell can bring a similar thing to Penn State, and I think that'll be very, very good for them.
Mm.
So, anything else that you learned, Zach?
Uh, Probably, but
I was gonna say I got a couple more
it's
things. Go for it if you
no,
We
you
can be
go
real
ahead.
quick with them.
You
Okay, we
you
can be
go
real
ahead.
quick with them. I think we're inching closer and closer to find out what this coaching staff is going to look like. A lot of talk about John Haycock coming over from Iowa
Mhm.
State, but there was also a lot of talk about him retiring when he was, still at Iowa State. So I think we may have got a hint that Jim Knowles is going to stick around on this staff. Um, Matt Campbell said, word for word, if you're going to build a championship team, you better have a championship staff. Zach, has anybody on that staff won a national championship before?
Begrudgingly, yes.
I know you're not the biggest Jim Knowles fan in the world, but I think Jim Knowles can be a good coordinator with the right kind of head coach that, reins him in and doesn't let him kind of go too mad scientist crazy. Because Jim Knowles, you cannot deny Jim Knowles is a good football coach. He did it at Oklahoma State. He won a national championship at Ohio State. Can he get a little too far out of the way? Yeah, we've seen it this season. But we also saw this defense simplify. They've won their last 3 games, and who knows? They might win their final 4 games of the season as well, and that would be really, really important for Penn State. And you might just see Jim Knowles on the staff again next year.
I if he's on staff, you've got to, I think you're right. You've got to rein him in. I don't know if I love that though. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if
Yeah,
Haycock comes over. I I
I
thought I
think
saw
I
somewhere where
think
he
some
was
people
without.
were saying he's gonna be like an analyst or something like that. Sorry, go ahead.
I thought I saw somewhere where Knowles is not like he's not being retained.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't think anybody knows for sure yet. I've not seen an official report from anybody super credible, so we'll see.
Hmm.
So, anything else you learned?
Uh, if I did, I'll probably remember it tomorrow. So I'll just say this. I already knew I liked Matt Campbell. What I learned is that I really love Matt Campbell and I really hope he succeeds. I know that's not great analysis, but I don't know if you could have aced a press conference more than he did today. I thought it was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal first step. I know you don't win with a press conference, but
No, but you
you
can win over people with a
yeah,
press conference.
yeah. And I think that's if you're a Penn State fan, like I think you should be really, really encouraged that this is your new head coach.
And I think you should be encouraged because it sounds like if all goes well, he could be there for a long time. And ultimately, that's what Penn State wants. Penn
Yeah,
State doesn't want a new coach every 5 years.
yeah,
Penn State wants a coach that's going to stick around and be there for a while. That's why they stuck with James Franklin as long as they did. That's why they stuck with
yeah,
coaches in the past for a very long time. This is
yeah,
a program that wants connection together and long tenured head coaches.
yeah. And this to that point, the big question was would they hire a coach that justified them getting rid of James Franklin? There were a lot of coaches that were in this conversation where I'm like, that's a bad hire for firing James Franklin. This was a phenomenal hire,
Hmm.
especially contextually. Like, and no disrespect to James Franklin, I think he's actually going to do really well at Virginia Tech. Like, I think Virginia Tech competes for the ACC in the next 2 years, if not next year, because the ACC stinks. But
Yeah.
like this, Matt Campbell might be the guy that gets Penn State to that next level. Like, I really do think that.
I think the most important thing is just keep being a top tier team in the Big Ten, and eventually things are going to roll your way, and you're going to have your opportunity to win a national championship. And I think Matt Campbell can do that. I think he can keep them in the top tier, or at least at the very least around the top tier, and that
Mhm.
would be a good opportunity for him. So